Kia ora koutou. Greetings from New Zealand. Kia ora is a Maori greeting in New Zealand. Now, when I saw the title of this session, I didn't just see peer support, I saw a broader title. And I did 2 papers for this because Bhargavi got back to me and said, well, I gave a very general paper, and she said, can you write a paper on peer support? I said, yes, I'll do that too. So you will get 2 papers, but I'm giving another talk today under the same broad topic, so you will get 3 for 1. That's my excuse. So I was struck by in the title, how we respond to people in extreme states. And I have been working in this area for 30 years, and like many of us who've been working for a long time in this area, we feel we have not really made much headway. So I'm subtitling my talk, Advice from a Failure. I do not feel a personal failure. I don't feel more of a failure than anyone else who's in this work, but I have a sense that we have not made as much headway as I would like to have, as we would like to have. Is that moving? Oh, so how do I? Yeah, it's not moving. Yeah.
I don't know why it's doing this.
Well, I'll just start off by saying this is my memoir called Madness Made Me. If you like reading mad memoirs, you might want to look at it. You can buy it on Amazon as an ebook or a paperback. And the other thing, if you want to talk to me about PeerZone, we're an international company. We train facilitators to deliver the workshops in 4 different countries, and we do other things as well. And so if you want to talk to me about PeerZone, you are welcome to do that at some time during this conference. Now, 10 lessons from 30 years. I have learned something because you learn a lot from your mistakes, they say. All the teachers tell you that. So I've learned something from the last 30 years, and I'm just going to get a piece of paper. My piece of paper's gone missing. Here it goes. So, what have I learned? Well, the first thing I've learned is that we need to seize the Berlin Wall moments. Now, you remember the Berlin Wall coming down? Some of you probably weren't born then. But I don't know if the Germans were surprised, but everyone else thought, wow, suddenly the Berlin Wall was coming down. And it was a great moment, a great symbolic moment in history. Now, sometimes I think we are like surfers on a surfing board, and for the last many years, I have felt no waves. But you see, the waves are beyond our control. We don't tell the waves when to happen, they just come. And when they do come, we need to ride them very skillfully. And so we need to be looking out for the waves. Unfortunately, I think there's a very ugly wave coming at the moment when you look at the global geopolitical situation, especially in the West. And I think it might be a dumper for a while, but the surfers, they always get up again and then they wait for the next wave. So that's really important that we seize those moments when they arrive. Second lesson I learnt was to clarify the story and our targets. So the story, we were talking about this in the Bob Whittaker workshop yesterday. We need to create a new story that counters the old story. And the new story in our area needs to go something like this. Madness is a legitimate, full human experience. It is very challenging, it is very disruptive, but value and meaning can be derived from it, and there are pathways through it. And we need to, once we have that story, then we need to say what are the responses that flow logically from that understanding of madness. We also need to have targets. When I started this work 30 years ago, we just said, oh, we want a nicer mental health system. Well, that wasn't clear enough. And if I was back there where I am, if I was back there now, I would say we need to change, we need to repeal the Mental Health Act. Another clear target is we need to close down hospitals. And I think we need a very, very clear target because we meander all over the place and we get sidetracked. Many of us got sidetracked into solving little problems for the system that weren't going to solve any big problems. They were just keeping us paid and not being very effective. So a very clear target is pretty important. Now, we need to understand the people who have been making life difficult for us. Now, there's an elephant in the room. Now, I don't know if Asians use this term because elephants are nice animals, but in English we say there's an elephant in the room, and that's the big problem people don't want to talk about. And the elephant in this room has 4 legs, and those legs they are firstly, Big Pharma is one leg of the elephant. Another leg is hospitals and institutions. Psychiatry has colluded with this. Now, there are plenty of very good psychiatrists, very good people, but they are, as a profession, they have colluded with the Big Pharma, with psychiatry, and the 4th leg is the legal framework, is the coercive legal framework. And people don't want to talk about these. When I talk to people who are sitting in government offices saying we need to reform the system, they never want to talk about these 4 legs or their big elephant. And we need to seize that elephant and we need to show it for what it is. And of course this elephant exists against a backdrop of othering, community othering, and a magical community expectations that psychiatry with all the other 3 legs will keep the community safe. There is no evidence for this, that psychiatrists can predict bad things happening. So one thing I didn't understand about this 4-legged elephant when I started, I thought that they were intelligent people, and I thought that if I talked to them about the evidence or about if we used good arguments or if we had ethical discussions about ethics, they would see that what they were doing was doing a lot of harm. But none of that works. I can tell you now, none of that ultimately works. It might work with a few individuals in a few places. The drivers of the system that we are trying to change are vested interests and people who want to keep the status quo. And once we understand that, I think we can be a little bit more effective about what we're doing. So, another thing, yesterday there was a challenge to the survivor movement about how the survivor movement was very white. And that made me feel very sad to hear that challenge. And I think is a challenge that has legitimacy. And I think in order to, and if you look at the movements that have been started, they have been started by the people who are more privileged in the group of people who have been affected. So, the women's movement, started by white educated women. The survivor movement, started by white educated people in the West, and we need to understand that privilege and create a space for people in our constituency who had less privilege. Now, the thing about privilege that I think is very striking is that privilege is so often blind to itself. Privilege is so pervasive. Me being brought up a middle-class white person in New Zealand, I didn't even know I had privilege until it was pointed out to me. I didn't know that a lot of people are brought up having no expectations, thinking they can't do things, having very limited horizons by their social position. And it was quite a revelation for me to understand that. We need to communicate a viable alternative. The viable alternative comes from the new narrative about what we think madness is. Now, I'm not going to talk about the alternative. I have one of the papers, the 3-for-1, one of the papers is called How to Develop Humane Responses to Mental Distress in 1,000 Words. So you will get that afterwards. Now, I think we need to appeal to two things, equality and freedom. Now, these are values that come from a lot of the major religious traditions, and in the more secular world, they have been translated into human rights frameworks. Now, why I think we should use these two values is that people in the part of the world I'm in, they can't argue with them. They can't say, well, we don't believe in equality, or we don't believe in freedom. They might try and twist it around, like for instance, they may say, oh yes, but they have the right to treatment, when I say they have the right to refuse treatment. But they're still using the same framework. So I think and in my world, equality is king. If you're in America, and especially if you're a Republican, freedom is king. But they're very important values. Now, another mistake we made was we kept on talking to people in the mental health system to try and bring about change. And really, what we should have done is engage the progressive end of the community, the politicians, the opinion leaders, the journalists, the academics, who had empathy and belief in our cause, who could see that what was happening to us inside that system and in society was wrong, and who could support us in our cause. That was a very key error that we made. We need to work inside and outside the system. I don't have the temperament to work inside the system, but some people do. But we need to be very careful when we're working inside the system that we don't become co-opted. And one of the things that can help us not to be co-opted is to have a strong beacon of independent activity operating outside that system. And unfortunately, in my own country, many of the people who are operating outside the system got jobs inside the system, and now they have salaries, and now they don't talk, they don't agitate, and that's very sad. We are all leaders here in one way or another, and we need to lead with humility and confidence. There are too many peacocks strutting around sometimes. That's unfortunate. But then there are too many people who don't use the opportunities of leadership to actually get things done. There are too many of us who got caught up in infighting. This is a waste of time and energy. We need to rise above that kind of thing. And leadership gives us leverage to make things happen. And we need to earn our leadership. We don't need to wait there and be bestowed with a cloak of leadership. We need to go out there and prove that we can make things happen in order to earn our leadership. And finally, we need to mind our well-being. because this is very hard, slow work, and I have finally come to the conclusion that I probably won't see many results in my lifetime. And, I cry about this quite a lot. I just sit and cry and think, we've done all this work and we're not seeing many results. And so we need younger people to come along and keep the work going. Now, the thing that we need to do is we need to support each other. We really need to support each other. And sometimes we need to take a break or get out altogether. And I think that we need to be able to do that freely and without feeling guilty about letting go of it. So these are my 10 lessons, and I want to finish with a quote, and it is, "Blessed are the cracked, for they let in the light." Thank you.